now have with us Luja Mathema. She is a mother to 7-year-old Samara and loves to read. She has a bachelor's in international relations and master's in gender development and globalization from the London School of Economics. It is one of the institutions that I always wanted to go to. And Luja has worked with the International Center of Mountain Development and the Nepali India Chamber of Commerce and Industries. She has made a debut in the literary field. She is also active in organizations such as Zonta, which focuses on building a better world for women and girls through advocating for raising awareness of women's rights, equality, education, and so much more. Luja, welcome to Kantipur News. First of all, I'm very impressed with the presentation of this book. I mean, let us begin with this. What inspired with this idea?
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. And to start with, my inspiration was my daughter Samara, and of course the children of Nepal, but it started with Samara. We would read some amazing stories about women and people from all over the world. We'd read stories like Ada Twist, the scientist, or Rebel Girls from, and we would read about all these amazing women, but we couldn't find anything about women from Nepal or people from Nepal for children. And so that's where the inspiration came from.
So you've written about these amazing women of Nepal, Ambica Shrestha, Choying Drolma, Pasang Lhamu Sherpa, and obviously Sapana Pradhan Malla as well. So why these 4 women to begin with?
Wow, that's a very big question. And I'd like to start by saying there are so many inspiring women and people in Nepal, but I chose these 4 women for the first installment of this series because I've either had the honor of meeting them to observe their work or have been inspired by them when I was growing up. The common theme that runs throughout these books is that they're all unstoppable, and they have this passion, this drive, this inner fire, and they all come from diverse and they have very intersectional backgrounds. And that's why I felt that it was really important to share their stories. They didn't let anything stop them despite the hurdles, despite the issues that came up. They persevered, and their strength, their resilience, and their vision really stood out for me.
So do we expect children to read this book, or do we expect the parents to read the stories of these inspiring women to their children?
So I would say that for younger children, these are stories that parents can read to them. And for older children, maybe 9 or 10, they can even read to themselves. I'd like to share that during the book launch that we had last week, it was really exciting and interesting to see a group of children just sitting at the front looking up at this amazing panel of women. And they raised questions like, what are rights? And they were able to ask this directly to Mrs. Sapana Pradhan Malla herself.
Children were asking this?
The children were asking this, and it was really, it was amazing to see them ask these questions directly to these individuals. And I hope these are the types of questions that the children can raise when reading these stories with their parents.
Can you please briefly share about the research process that went through in writing these stories? I'm sure there were so many stories or tales about these women that you probably wanted to include in the books, but had difficulties in condensing them into what you've done.
So yes, the writing process, the research process has been very exciting. There's a lot of layers to it. So my background, as you shared, is in international relations, gender development, and globalization. So I really had to learn to take a step back, and instead of just sharing the information and like trying to get all the facts out there, like, okay, this is their life story, this is the things that I want you to know, I had to really see things from a child's perspective, and I had to ask myself questions like, what would make it more interesting to them? What would make it more meaningful? How could they relate better to these stories? So it really made me think and make me take a step back when writing these stories.
Well, growing up, I realize now we did not have books like these. We only had a chapter on Pasang Lhamu Sherpa in the Nepali textbook. Probably was in grade 7 or 8. Did you have some similar experiences? Were you seeking for idols in terms of Nepali women who could inspire you to become what you've done yourself?
Yes. I realized that we learn about these women much later in our life when we personally maybe want to learn and find out more. Then we go online, we read articles, we watch interviews with these women or about these women. But there's nothing for young children, and it's so important to have this representation from a young age and to be inspired from a young age.
I went through the book and it's quite very interesting also in terms of the illustrations and everything.
Yes.
They go along with the stories that you've shared about this women as well. So can you please share the idea of the text, English and Nepali, and going along with the illustrations as well? So what was the idea and who else were involved in coming up with this gem of a book that you've done?
So during the writing process and in a children's book, like you said, the art is very integral to sharing these stories. And I was able to work with Mr. Prakash Ranjit, Ms. Shaili Malla, and Mr. Nuja Shakir on these stories. And they've really captured the emotions of these stories so well. It was lovely to be able to collaborate with them and to share these visions and describe these visions and how it's turned out. It's been amazing.
So, well, we have an entrepreneur, we have Nun who's done so well in her field and also in the contributions in terms of music and the philanthropy she's involved in. We have Pasang Lhamu Sherpa, the great and the only first woman to have ascended the Mount Everest, and also Sapana Pradhan Malla, who's done exceedingly well in terms of the judiciary of Nepal as well. So how do you think do children or will children look at these women through your books?
So just to share a little bit more about these women, like you said, let's start with Mrs. Ambica Shrestha. She's a tourism entrepreneur, and she's also an avid believer in women's rights, and she was part of many organizations that
It's sad
promoted.
to have her passed away only recently.
Yes, it was very sad, and I'm very lucky to have been able to have spoken to her in person to be able to share these stories. But it was really interesting that during the book launch, her daughter actually said, at the very core of her mother, it wasn't about setting the benchmark for maybe luxury tourism in Nepal, but rather it was about her core value of believing in Nepal, believing in sharing Nepal with the world. And so she put it across so beautifully. It really encapsulated the importance of having your core values, your beliefs, your passions, and following through with that. So it's the same with Mrs. Sapana Pradhan Malla. From a very young age, she believed in equality and justice. And in her stories, this is seen through issues of child marriage, through menstrual taboos, and there's so much more about
We've even
equality.
seen her philosophies and ideologies in the verdicts that she issues through the Supreme Court.
Exactly, and I think even early on in her career, she was part of fighting for 33% women representation, along with a lot of like-minded people. So it was just very inspiring to see that. And with Mrs. Ani Choying, despite the darkness and the issues she had growing up with like domestic violence, she still looks at the world and treats everyone with such compassion and kindness. And she really uses her platform to help those who cannot and serve those that cannot help themselves. And with Ms. Pasang Lhamu Sherpa, I mean, like you said, we do study about her in school. There's, you know, in our textbooks, we do learn about her. But actually all the hurdles that she had to go through, what she had to do to be able to summit Mount Everest. And many people who've actually read this book have shared that they didn't know that she had attempted a few times before she was actually successful.
Indeed.
So it's their resilience, their strength, and their passion. I hope that's what the readers can see from
Now,
this.
based on these observations that you've made and what you've written for the children, what key messages do you think our kids or the kids of the future will get from these women and the book?
I really hope that this book helps them understand that it's okay to be a dreamer, follow your dreams, have that drive, have that passion, and despite the hurdles, like, be persistent. You can achieve what you set your mind out to. And also, I think with Mrs. Ambica Shrestha, when I was interviewing her, I noticed that she had something that many in our generation today that maybe we are missing, and that's really being present in the moment, because all of us have our mind everywhere there is. And so she was just so present that she made everyone feel very seen and very heard, and I think that's a very important quality for people to have.
One question that just came on the top of my mind right now, I mean, reading culture is on a decline, right? Why do you think is it important for kids, especially particularly girls, to be reading about these aspirational figures, the 4 that you've written about, and we'll be talking about your future plans and the other women that you probably will include as well. So why is it important, first of all, to read books, not the PDFs? Because I really prefer the feeling of and the smell of the pieces as we turn the pages as well. So why do you think is it important first to read the books, and for girls especially to be reading about these inspirational figures in women?
So why is it important to read? So there's this quote, the more you read, the more you know. The more you know, the more places you'll go. And it's by Dr. Seuss. So I think this really captures the importance of children's literacy.
He also said, if you don't fit in, you are not born to fit in, you are born to stand out.
Yes.
Why fit in if you're born to stand out?
Yes. So I think that really, it does really highlight why it's important to read from a young age. It helps provide a foundation for our education. It helps with our cognitive development, our social, emotional development, and even with our mental health. So reading is, it's very important to do from a young age.
It takes to universes unexplored.
Yes, exactly. So why reading is, I will say that, but especially about these women.
And for the girls.
And for the girls, it's because representation matters. Like I said, they're from such intersectional and diverse backgrounds that for children and girls to be able to see themselves in these women is really, really important.
Well, very important keynote that you've shared. It's first of all very important to be reading, not PDFs. I'm not a PDF guy. I'm more into books and turning the pages, and the feel of the book with a cup of tea in particular is always a great thing. To start the mornings, I think it was Sydney Sheldon. I finished it was Memories of Midnight, I guess.
Wow, okay.
I finished it overnight. Now, challenges in process. Were there any challenges in condensing? I've already asked you this before, but in detail as well. In condensing the lives and the achievements of these women, Pasang Lhamu Sherpa was not there, so probably there were a few struggles. But you've met, like you mentioned, now late Ambica Madam and Ani at the same time, Sapana Madam as well.
Yes.
So what are the challenges? Because they bring so much of experiences, and whenever you sit with someone to learn about their lives and read so much about them through the internet as well, it's a lot of desk work as well. So how did you manage all of it about these 4 women and then in this book?
So like I did share earlier, I did have to take that step back and ask all of these questions. I was very lucky to have been able to interview late Miss Ambica Shrestha.
How was it like? How is she in person?
She's amazing. She was amazing.
She's a brilliant orator, by the way.
Brilliant. She's brilliant. Like I said, she always made you feel very seen and very heard.
And at home as well.
And at home.
It's her aura.
Yeah. So it was lovely to just to be able to sit with her and to be taken through her life, with her own words. It was it was amazing. Then with Mrs. Sapana Pradhan Malla as well, to be able to get that time from her and to be able to ask her these questions. Because we learn about a lot of these women, what they've achieved later in life. But I feel like your childhood is also such an important part of making one who you are today. So that it was really, really nice to be able to go through all these experiences with them. With late Miss Pasang Lhamu Sherpa, I was able to speak to her children about what they remember from her mother. And with Miss Annie Choying, I was able to speak to her myself. So this was all very, very amazing. And like you said, there is information about them out there. There's a lot of interviews, but to be able to bring them down to a level where children would appreciate and understand, it did take a lot. So for this, I'm very grateful to my mom, Luja Mathema, Samara, my daughter, and to Mr. Praveen Adhikari and Mr. Ajan Maski as well. They were there from the very beginning. Their feedback and their support has been so integral to this, as well as the final stages of editing. I was able to work with Miss Pravina Taladar, Miss Eva Maharjan, and my aunt as well, Mika. So all of their feedback has been very important to me.
So you've mentioned these women come again, come with a lot of experiences and their struggles, their achievements as well. So what aspects of their lives did you find the most difficult to simplify for children who we expect to be reading the books or being read to?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of big issues that we touch upon in these books, from passing on and death, to rights, to, again, like with Miss Sapana Pradhan stories, menstrual taboos and child marriage. So these are a lot of heavy topics that we have to write about in children's books, because this is how they become aware of these issues. But I think there's a certain way that we have to put it across that children will understand, and maybe they can ask these questions. So it was a lot of big issues about gender inequality that we had to highlight.
On that note, like, did you consider, would it be too much information sharing a lot of different things that you wanted to include but could not? Were there any of those tales from these 4 amazing women?
Yes, yes there was, but I feel that we have really captured the core and the essence of these women, and we have touched on all the issues, despite maybe not being able to maybe expand or go deeper into it. The issues are here to be discussed when ready.
So you've already mentioned that you collaborated or worked with the women or in the family members of these 4 amazing women as well. So how do you envision this series contributing to the broader conversation about gender equality, first of all, and the women empowerment in Nepal?
So, like I said earlier, representation really matters. And so
the political parties, they claim and they voice for it's during the election times. That's 33%. We only have that in the House of Representatives, and the parties do not have the 33% representation among themselves as well. So, yeah, how do you think is it going to contribute?
I think for children to be aware of these issues, because it makes such a difference to know about them from a young age, rather than learning about them and educating yourself much later on these issues, much later in life. Children can voice their thoughts from much earlier. So I feel that's where it will be really important. And in terms of, again, the diversity and the intersectionality, it's so important. On that, I believe you did ask earlier about, like, we've written it in a bilingual. We've written a bilingual book. Yeah. It's in English and Nepali, and I think that's also
with amazing illustrations. I want to repeat that.
Thank you, and that's also really important to highlight. So along with the publishing house Nepalaya and myself, we thought it'd be really important to have a bilingual book so that it reaches far and wide. Nepalaya have this concept of pledge a book, where if you pledge a book, they will send it to the libraries across Nepal, so that children from all the districts can have access to it. And so, why bilingual as well? Because it really helps improve our language skills.
Indeed. On that note, I have a question. I mean, the pricing though, is that not on the expensive side?
Okay, thank you for that question.
Is it for schools, or I don't know?
We would love for it. I would love for it to be for the schools as well. But if you look at the books, they are hardcover, and there are 4 books within these series. So if you actually think about it,
and again, the content is what matters.
And the content itself. So yes, it might be considered to be pricier, but then there's so much that went into making these books and to make them a good quality, that I think that it
despite the pricing strategy, I have to tell the viewers that this is the first, or one of its kind, probably the first one in terms of Nepal with stories about these amazing women. So probably worth the value as well. Moving on, are you planning to expand? I asked you this yesterday as well over our short brief meeting as well. Now we only had a couple of days back Polesha also, representing Nepal, winning our first bronze at the Paralympics as well. Do you plan to add to the series?
Yes, I would love to write about more inspirational women and men of Nepal. There are so many stories to share from across Nepal, and I hope to continue to be able to do that. And just to teach and show children, like, it's okay to dream, to follow your dreams and have that passion. Despite, like, I mean, growing up, there are many hurdles and difficulties, like, just persevere, like, you can do it.
Another question, again, top of my mind, who did you idolize in terms of authors? when you were growing up?
That's a very big question. I'm a Potterhead. I love.
That's I'm only a movie person. I've never read Harry Potter's.
So I mean, J.K. Rowling was amazing.
I love her tweets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was one, and I still enjoy reading today. But again, there's so many. Jeffrey Archer. I used to love to read his stories. So many more. So many.
You don't want to ask me, but I won't tell you anyway. So I grew up, my first book, the one that I read was Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens.
Oh, wow.
I'm a big fan of Charles Dickens, and obviously Shakespeare was always there growing up. But yeah, again, I have been having a lot of, switches here and there. Paulo Coelho, I have an entire collection of Coelho. Cindy Sheldon is another one.
Yeah.
A lot of non-fiction works as well. So in terms of non-fiction, what inspired you? Went to LSE, I mentioned earlier, dream institution to go for anyone, especially with an interest. I'm an MBA myself, so with an interest in economics as well. What made you go to LSE? This is again a personal question. I'm seeking advice.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask you to write my application.
No. I mean, like you said, LSE is. It's a dream university. And in terms of what I wanted to study, they are known for their political science background. And so that's why I chose to go to LSE, and I was very lucky to have been accepted. And I'm very happy and grateful.
Again, it's a very blessed enough. What is a suggestion for those watching and aspiring to go to unis? Like, again, off topic, but I want to ask you that so that our viewers have an idea. What does it take to go to LSE?
Again, I think find what you are passionate about. And I think that's what will really help you stand out and help share your story and what you are hoping to learn and achieve.
Again, like these women, we want our viewers to know from and learn from your life lessons, lessons and experiences as well. So in terms of figures to add to this series, do you have any particular women in mind that you think, okay, these are the women I'm going to work on or write about?
I do, but until I've spoken to them personally, I don't think I'll be sharing that here. So I do have to reach out to them and ask them.
Now again, like the application issues, so what are your, inputs, suggestions, or words for aspiring authors, especially girls who want to write, or even the gender equality again, irrespective of gender, for the children who want to write, even poetry that they want to, or articles for the newspapers. Growing up, it was so difficult for us to, send our articles. We didn't even know how to reach out to the newspapers. Forget about television, it was quite difficult. So what is your suggestion to people, kids who want to write, and people in general who want to be authors, or they have this dream of, having the publication of their own?
Yes, I would say do it. I know that it can seem really scary. This itself felt like when I bungee jumped.
Oh my God. When did you do it?
I did it in 2011.
Oh, was it?
Last Resort.
Last Resort, I went that.
Oh my goodness, so it really felt like that because
the adrenaline, the waiting factor.
And I think you get very scared about maybe sharing this with not just with the world, I think, and but your creativity and your ideas are needed. It's so important to share with the world. So if you want to write, if you have these ideas, do it.
Even if you think you're not good enough, I'm not good enough, even with my news anchoring, which,
No, you're very,
it's, people should never stop dreaming.
No.
Right? The sky is always the sky is not even the limit now. People, only yesterday we had the NASA, getting back so many things happening around the world. In our news, you have to watch that. Other than that, I read the book. Can
I ask you, what did you think about the book? Yes.
It's amazing. I wish, again, like I mentioned, we did not have these kind of books growing up. I mentioned as well, like Nepali books, we had tales, only like a couple of pieces about a couple of people that we could look up to. They were not detailed as well. The way you've captured the life and essence of these amazing women, it was not done. And when we were kids, we didn't have access to books, first of all. They were very limited, and the literature was either very heavy on the side of Lakshmi Prasad Devkota, all of these great literators of Nepal, in Nepali.
Yes.
But in terms of contents for children to look up to, Nepali men or women, it was just the textbooks and the couple of pages that we had, and with a black and white photograph. I remember Pasang Lhamu Sherpa, and the illustrations, guys, very great. If you are a new parent, which I hope to be soon, I suggest you to get this book. I found this very interesting, and some of the questions that I have about the stories that you've mentioned that have moved me personally as well, and I was having this conversation with Pratibha Didi as well earlier, and she mentioned the same factor. I mean, you've stated through all of these 4 stories of these amazing women that it is all about the way, the lens that we put on and looking at life, the situations. I mean, I'm going to quote you directly from here. The world looks through, how the world looks through different glasses.
Yes.
What was that?
So this was in late Miss Ambica Shrestha's book, and it was something that she learned from her grandmother herself as well. There was red lens glasses and green lens glasses. You're both looking at the world through the same glasses. It's just through different colors. And it was so aptly put that it's the same world, we're just seeing it so differently.
Also, another factor is very important for the kids to know from their embryonic stage to, I don't know what the literary term is, you know that better than I do, every faith being the same. How significant is it for us to educate the children from their nascent phase or the early stages of their life that irrespective of color, ethnicity, whatever background, we're all the same?
Yes. It's very important, and again, to know that from a young age is very important. It creates that awareness, that openness, just to learn and be aware of everything around us. It's important.
Another factor is it's okay being different. We all are different, and how do we teach our kids? Or because at times, children, when they go to their schools in the initial phase, everyone is different, but some children might be reserved. Being an introvert is fine, but at the same time, despite having talent, some kids probably have that inhibition or factors, restricting them from opening themselves to the rest of their classmates or the world later on in their lives. So how do we help them get out of that? Your book has done that through these stories, but in your opinion?
I mean, every child is different, but as parents, we will always worry. And I think that we have to just be able to trust in the child that they will find themselves. We can teach them the tools and help give them the tools to help them along with that. But it is a journey that they'll be going on their own.
Another fact, it reminds me of the song Imagine by John Lennon. It is okay to be a dreamer. So what was the line behind that? I think it was from Ambika Madam's story.
Yes.
And in fact, all of them were dreamers, and they've made their dreams come true.
Yes, they've all had that dream, and they've all ensured that they've reached there, and they are still with Mrs. Ani Choying or Miss Sapana Pradhan, they're still working towards doing more and constantly creating that awareness, and they're still building their dreams. And so it's lovely just to see that and be able to share that.
On top of that, you have anecdotes about the lives and the struggles from. We're not going to share a lot because we want to make sure that they read the books as well. You worked at organizations that voice for women rights, at the same time climate concerns as well. So how do you think, I'm not sure, the issue of impact of climate change on children has been voiced enough in general in the country, forget about the rest of the world. How do you think can we make our kids aware, first of all, about women rights in general, which, you've already mentioned that before as well. Let's stress on the impact of climate change. How do we make them, kids, aware about what is happening in terms of our surrounding environment, the changing weather patterns, erratic rainfalls and everything? What is the idea?
So climate change affects everyone, but especially women, and I think, like it's said by UN Women, it's a threat multiplier. It exacerbates the already existing issues.
We're very vulnerable to that,
Yes.
especially in Nepal, in
Yes.
terms of the glaciers that have been melting and the disasters we've been having in recent time. So, yeah, how do we instill the idea so that our children can be vocal? And because the way the media, Kantipur television does a story on climate change every other week as
Yes.
well. So how do we make sure that our children also, echo the voices being raised by media and the, activists in terms of climate change?
Again, I think children are aware of these issues, but again, we have to be able to have that discussion and that conversation with them that this is what climate change is and this is how it will affect maybe women and girls more than it can affect other people because they're already more vulnerable. So it's important to constantly have that discussion and raise that awareness. The news and having that news there, like you said, every other week is amazing. But are you having
because
that conversation?
Because we have disasters every other week. I mean,
Exactly.
It's very sad, guys, but yeah.
But are you having that conversation at home as well? Like it's important to take
It becomes so difficult to even like get out of the home and come to office to work. So it's I mean
Yeah. So.
And the Prime Minister is going to the United Nations General Assembly, so we hope that he raises the issue of climate change and its impact, particularly in Nepal. I think Nepal should be one of the leaders in terms of raising awareness about climate change.
I think with ISIMO, they really do try and do that, especially in the Hindu Kush Himalayas.
It's not just Nepal, it's the belt of the mountains that we share with Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bhutan as well.
They really focus
China.
on that. And I think that's very important. Like in today's day and age, we really need to have that discussion and awareness.
One last question. In terms of now tourism, you went to LSE again. It's an business economics perspective question. So with the impact of climate change, we've been hearing about the cancellations of reservations of tourists because September, October is the second season for tourists in Nepal as well. So what do you think should Nepal be doing in terms of presenting its core issue of, first of all, the world attention on curbing the impacts of climate change, and at the same time making the global community of tourists who look at countries like Nepal as their travel destinations to make them feel safe and secure to visit our country?
We need to make sure, this is a very big question and I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this, but I think
as a public,
as from someone from the general public, I think, developing our infrastructure and maintaining that is very important, and to have the disaster relief and risk management we need to make sure that is strong, and that the tourists who come here are aware that these are the protocols that we will follow, and I think that will give confidence to the tourists to come and enjoy being in Nepal.
Well, thank you so much, Luja. It's been a beautiful morning, and I look forward to hearing about the reviews, reading about the reviews of this book, and at the same time, more women, and like you mentioned, men as well, if they're inspirational enough for children to be read to.
Definitely.
Best wishes always, and looking forward to another conversation over a cup of coffee. I don't know if you do not drink coffee or not.
No, I love coffee.
All right, thank you so much, Luja.
Thank you very much.